Well, it is black and gold time, baby. We got to talk about the Boston Bruins. My goodness, are these guys making headlines all over the place and not for the right reasons? Their captain, he has elbow surgery. He's got to go home. He's got to think about returning. What's the future of Bergeron? Don Sweeney and David Pastrnak? Oh boy. Pastrnak versus the GM. That is not what you want to see if you're a Bruins fan. We're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about that. Bruce Cassidy is fired. We are going to go ahead and we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the entirety of the Bruins cap situation. They only have $2.3 million left to sign Bergeron and anyone else they need to get this roster done. We're going to go ahead. We're going to talk about Marchand, Grzelcyk. We're even going to go ahead and talk about McAvoy because they are injured, baby. They are not going to be starting the season healthy. Finally, we're going to take a look at the Boston Bruins 2022-2023 preview with Patrice Bergeron, without Patrice Bergeron. We're going to talk about Pastrnak's new contract, and oh my goodness, baby, are we going to talk about all things Boston Bruins, including your possible new replacement coach. Doesn't that sound fun, Bruins fans? I think so. Let's get after it. Let's talk about it. So the first place we want to start is easy peasy lemon squeezy. It is with the UFAs. Now, the great news for Boston, there's only one key UFA. His name is Patrice Bergeron. That seems like it's something doable because he's had his entire career in Boston. And you've heard me say it before. Bergeron is a top 5 NHL player, active today. Why? He is the best two-way player in the game, Selke Award winner. Maybe we should just change the award to the Bergeron Award. He won another one. He is incredible. He's one of the smartest. He's one of the best draw guys in the league. He's one of the best leaders in the league. He is self-admittedly not as fast as he used to be, but his brain still works quite well. Unfortunately, he's had a lot of miles on his body. He's had a lot of surgeries. That famous Stanley Cup run with a punctured lung is well documented in NHL lore and has even created alongside a meme of LeBron James being carried off due to a cramp. Look, Bergeron, he's legendary. It's the way it goes. So we're going to have to go ahead. We're going to talk about him and will he be back with the Bruins or somewhere else? But let me go ahead and let me take you on a journey of the Boston Bruins right now as we head into the season. The first thing we want to look at is the key cogs. Why? Cogs matter. Players matter. The personnel you have in your system matters. So when we think about the key cogs in the system right now for the Bruins, doesn't it start with Charlie McAvoy? He's got a brand new contract. He was the second best defenseman in the NHL this year behind Cale Makar. We talk about Yossi, we talk about Hedman, we talk about Fox, but Charlie McAvoy graded out as the second best defenseman according to Evolving Hockey and Advanced Analytics. I had him pegged as the best defenseman going in this year. Not too bad by Coach Ryan D getting him number 2 when he claimed to be number 1. It is definitely Makar, though. Either way, franchise player in McAvoy. Hampus Lindholm comes over in a trade, promptly signs a massive deal, and he joins Charlie McAvoy as the 1-2 punch on the back end. I gotta say, between Devon Toews and Cale Makar and Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm, I don't know which one I like better. Because we're in the recency bias, I may lean towards the Avs, but if you got the Bruins top pair, I don't blame you. These two guys are awesome. And then Matt Grzelcyk, yes, he is on the IR. We'll talk all about his injury, but he won't be starting the season. He is a very important piece to the blue line here. Then we have Marchand, Pastrnak, and Hall, and we have Swayman and Ullmark. Why nobody else on this one? Because they're either not signed or there's a question mark to their future. So right now, these are the key cogs that are locked in, ready to go for 2022-2023, baby. Then we have a whole bunch of players that have 1 year left on their deal. In order of importance, in my opinion, you can have your own opinion, comment down below. We got Pasta. We got Swayman. He's coming off that entry-level deal. We got Eric Holla. We got Craig Smith. We got Thomas Nozick. We got Wagner, Frederick, Clifton, and Fogliano. It's Foligno, buddy. Fogliano. And we have Foligno. With those players and the fact that they're only locked up for 1 more year, Bergeron's our only UFA. We've got some salary cap considerations to look at. Guess what? $2.23 million. It is all that is remaining on the Bruins salary cap. Oi, yoy, yoy. Right now, your biggest hits that you're looking at, you have Ullmark at $5 million for 3 years left. That's great for a starting goaltender. He had a hot run, but you heard me say it all year, Bruins fans. Swayman. This is Swayman's net. Let the kid run with it. He had the better year, and I'm still convinced at this point in time, because I said if you end up switching between Ullmark and Swayman in the playoffs, it's not going to work out. I'm still convinced that if they would have started Jeremy Swayman in game 1, they would have beaten the Carolina Hurricanes, but they gave up 2 with Ullmark in the net. Swayman, I thought, played very, very well on the back half with the final 5 games. Yeah, he had some softies in there, but he's a kid. This is the guy you want to play. So Ullmark on the books for $5 million. Could be good, could be bad. Foligno is on the books for $3.8 million. He's got 2 years left. He wasn't that productive for the Bruins this year. We know that. And Derek Forbort, the former Winnipeg Jets, that was a bit of an overpay. 2 years left at $3 million. So these are some of the biggest hits. These may be some of the more expendable players, but you're going to have to stay tuned on till later in the video as I talk about some of the bigger pieces of trade bait in the Boston Bruins locker room. The next thing we're going to want to talk about is the injuries, because the Bruins opening day roster, it's a little bit sketch to say the best. I mean, if these guys didn't have so many injuries, and you really got to give them a strong applause for what they ended up doing against the Carolina Hurricanes, pushing one of the best teams to Game 7. I mean, we find out that Brad Marchand needs double hip surgery. My goodness, that is rough. 6 months he's going to be out for, so he's not ready for the start of the season. Who knows how he'll be when he comes back. He'll be fine in the long term, but it's going to be a tough start for him next year. You know, you got Matt Grzelcyk, who is out there with a right shoulder surgery, so that's going to be 6 months. These things don't heal quickly. McAvoy, left shoulder surgery, 6 months. You can't morph Grzelcyk and McAvoy into one player. If you could, you'd have a dynamic defenseman. But at this point in time, you have 0 out of your 2 most important guys back there. So Lindholm will have to carry the load. And we know Bergeron was also out with elbow surgery, and that is going to be another 10 weeks. But he should be ready for the start of the season if he chooses to play. All right, let's rip over here to CapFriendly.com. When we go ahead, take a look at it, you'll get a visualization of what is going on in Boston right now. Take a look up here at the top. What you can see is today's cap hit is $80 million. They only have $2.38 million in cap space left to spend, and no Bergeron. That is scary. Take a look at their draft picks. They don't have a round 1 draft pick this year. They have a round 2. They have a round 3 from Calgary, a 4, no 5, a 6, and a 7. And yes, they still have their first round picks from 23 and 24, but they lost their second round picks in the Lindholm deal. So they don't have a lot of bullets in the gun either to reset this team. Take a look at the forwards right now. We know we got Pasta with a 6.666666. Great contract. Left for 1 more year, and then he's a UFA. We're going to talk all about where we see Pastrnak in his next contract in a minute. Marchand, key cog for this team. So you got Marchand, Hall, Coyle, and Debrusk. Those are the only 4, let's call them long-term, medium-term contracts you have on the books right now up front. You have all these guys that only have 1 year left, and then we know we have Bergeron who needs to re-sign. And yes, you got Anton and you got Lazar, but they're nothing that is going to make or break the team. I'd like Lazar to come back. The defense is the pride and joy of this team. $6.5 million forever and a day for Hampus Lindholm. He takes up 7.9% of the cap. Charlie McAvoy, $9.5 million. That's right in line with Cale Makar. Of course it is. These guys are franchise players. Then you got Brandon Carlo, Matt Grzelcyk, Derek Forbort, Mike Riley. I mean, you've got a solid decor here. Nothing to worry about. Linus Ullmark has 3 years left at $5 million. And Jeremy Swayman, 1 year left right now. Then when you come down here, what you can take a look at is, what is the roster size? Well, you've got 22 on the roster. You only have 33 standard player contracts available, average age of 28, which isn't too bad right now, but that is really leaving you with a really tough current cap space situation. And I don't know if you read this, but Don Sweeney has said he is not buying out anybody. He said there will be no buyouts on the books. So don't expect any of those contracts to get bought out. And don't worry, we're going to talk about candidates for trade and how you're going to move and get space. But before we do, I want to thank my buddy at Tasty Snack. Look, he is part of our members page right now. We're going to go ahead and bring it up here. All of these beauties are part of the coach's staff. If you go down below, there's a little join button down there. You can smash that. You can join the coach's staff. And because he's in our executive suite, he gets to claim and ask for Coach Ryan D to make him a video once per month. He chose the topic of the Bruins as he's a diehard Bruins fan. So since it's his first one, since he was our first executive suite member, we're going to go ahead. We're going to try to do it justice here. So thanks for being here, buddy. He's also a part of our Discord chat group. So this is free. If you're a Boston fan and you want to chat Boston hockey, him, myself, and the rest of the crazy nuts in the Discord, we want to talk to you. So go ahead down below to that link, join it, totally free. Great chat. I'm in there all the time if you want to get in touch. Also, please think about subscribing. I do have a tendency to do too many Bruins videos considering there's 32 other teams out there that I can cover, but I like covering the Bruins right now. Fun fact, it's my dad's favorite team, so I've got a soft spot for him, that's for sure. Then go ahead, press that like button. If you haven't done it yet, help me down below. Like, it spreads the video. It's a good thing. And please, if you don't mind, comment. If you think I'm right, comment. You think I'm wrong, comment. You think I'm stupid, comment. And if you just want to help spread the love, put your favorite emoji down there. All interaction helps spread this video from thumbs up to comments to emojis. So look forward to hearing from you down below. Let's get back to that Bruins content. All right, so now we get into the drama piece of things. And don't worry, we're coming back to Bergeron. We're coming back to the Pasta contract. There's so many things we're coming back to. We're just setting it up. Drama time. Coach and GM Cassidy, longtime friend of Don Sweeney, he's fired. He was hard on players, allegedly. He doesn't like grinders, according to David Backus. He doesn't like guys that are slow, get to the net, and can do their job. He wants speed down the middle. He wants offense, and he wants his players pushing the pace. That's why he put the perfection line together. That's why he found it so difficult to break them up, but he found great success doing that this year, didn't he? Don Sweeney, not fired. Maybe he should be, maybe he shouldn't be. We'll come back to Sweeney. He hates drafting. We know that. What does that mean? Well, he's either terrible at it, hates it, or loves to trade it away. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. The Boston Bruins would trade their mother. And that is because there is massive pressure from the ownership group to make the playoffs year in and year out. They want to be in it. They want to be a contender. They want to win a cup, but they don't want to miss the playoffs. And you know what? It's not a bad strategy. You can't always build dynasties like the Colorado Avalanche or the Tampa Bay Lightning. Just getting to the dance can be good enough because anyone has a chance to win it. And Boston has had one of the longest windows in the NHL. They have had a window since 2010, maybe 2009. They won it in 2011. They ended up at a Stanley Cup final. They lost. Oh, well. It happens, but they have been perennial playoff contenders and threats. They got a cup out of it, a final out of it. It's not a bad thing. Sweeney has also put them into cap hell. And David Pastrnak has said, if Sweeney's here, I'm out? ? Pastrnak has said there is little truth to this rumor that he will play for whoever he needs to play for, but he's a UFA, so usually where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's been a lot of people commenting about Bruce Cassidy and Don Sweeney, at least allegedly, in the Bruins land. And finally, as we said, he told Bruce he'd be back. Allegedly, ? I don't know, but Cassidy thought he was safe. Apparently 2 weeks before his firing, he figured he was good. He figured he was coming back. He was invited over to Don's house. Don ended up having a chat with him. He told him right to his face, right then and there, I gotta let you go. Cassidy was not happy about it. He was heated. He clearly admits that he was heated. He's a winner. He wants to win. He's already on the coaching carousel. He's out hunting for a job. He thinks he's a good coach. Do you think he's a good coach? You let me know down below. I thought he was a pretty good coach in a results-based business. You got to get results. Cassidy gets results. The interesting thing about that, though, is that, you know what? Relationships, they matter, but at the end of the day, keeping your job matters more. So Sweeney is going to hang this one on the coach. But at the end of the day, there's not much left to work with after this year. And don't worry, we will talk about the Bruins next year because they have a window, but it's only 1 year longer. And finally, the last rumor that's been talked about is that it was Patrice Bergeron that said, if you don't fire Cassidy, I'm not coming back. And Bergeron has said there is no truth to that, and I fully believe that because he was very polite to Claude Julien on his way out. He has never made a stink about a coach a day in his life. Why would he start now closer to the end of it? Bergeron remains on a professional friendship level with Claude Julien. He liked Bruce Cassidy, according to his own quotes. This is Bergeron's own quotes. So at the end of the day, I think that was just a rumor. All right, so let's talk about Bruce Cassidy himself. He came from the AHL. He was an AHL bench boss with the Providence Bruins. Boston loves developing internally. And he developed names such as Tuukka Rask, Brad Marchand, Johnny Boychuk, Adam McQuaid. He had Khudobin. He had Miller. he had Pasta, he had Spooner. These are all guys he graduated into the NHL as the head coach of the Providence Bruins. He was also the Bruins assistant coach in 16-17. Julian ends up getting the boot, the Stanley Cup winner, and then he becomes the Bruins head coach in the year 17, and he moves on to the year 2022, which is right now. The Athletic, the man who covers, the Athletic's the way to go, guys. Like, if you want the best in sports news outside of hot garbage sports, it's the Athletic. Fluto is the man that covers Boston right now, and here's what he is quoted saying: Cassidy's initial urge was to open up the offense and give more operating room to younger players. Ironically, though, Sweeney identified a reversal in those two tenets, and that caused him to fire Cassidy, the latter in particular. So I think Cassidy had a very good relationship with the guys he had in the AHL. He had a large degree of respect for guys like Zdeno Chara and Patrice Bergeron, whose locker room it was. He let the veterans lead. He really did promote those young guys and made them great NHL stars. But then the next crop of young guys, well, he was a little hard on them, to say the least. Jake Debrusk is not a fan of him. There's a lot of players that have not been a fan of Bruce Cassidy's style. He calls himself tough but fair, and he holds players accountable. And it's very interesting when we talk about a coach and the NHL today because you can't be everybody's friend. Your job is to be their coach, not their friend. However, young people today, especially young players, they're looking for both. You need and you are looking for performance. If you can get performance out of a coach and he's not abusive to you and puts you in safe situations, then listen, learn, and do your job. However, there is really a huge movement to connect personally with players, but this sometimes isn't a personal business. This is a business about trades. This is a business about results. This is a business where you have a job today and you do not have a job tomorrow. That's coach and player together. So it is pretty tough to be able to create both those environments. These aren't employees for life. These are contractors that play for a team temporarily until they are either shipped out to their next team or they're cut. So there is a little bit of I think a misunderstanding in this, but that's just my opinion. I want to know what you think down below. I like the new young guys, but I don't want a guy that's too nice to my players. I want a guy that's a coach to my players, not their friend. But then Cassidy did have a problem with young players. Now, there's two schools of thought here. I'm going to pull up the player names. Here is a list of players under 24 that have played for Cassidy that have just not blossomed. And it is a long list. When you take a look, you're going to notice some names here like Donato, Kasha. You're going to go ahead and see Lazon. He ended up over in Seattle. Nick Ritchie is in there. Malcolm Subban, Darth Vlader, Dan Vlader. There's a whole bunch of names on this list that found limited success in the NHL. Some success, but limited. The question then becomes, is it the Boston Bruins scouts? Is it Don Sweeney? Or is it Bruce Cassidy's inability to develop them? Well, Don says he's going to go ahead and change the coach, but we're going to have to talk about Don a little bit later on, and we're going to have to talk about the scouts because I don't know if Boston's that good at drafting, to be honest. I don't know if Cassidy is actually bad at developing younger players or if he was just really dealt a bad hand in terms of the talent that came in. What can I do to point to that, to back up that argument? Well, how can I not point to the fact that they had 3 back-to-back draft picks and they ended up missing on Barzal, Chabot, and Kyle Connor? And people are going to go, oh my God, don't keep coming back to that. But you have to. You missed all 3. Seriously, you could have gone 3 for 3, but you missed all 3 and they were picked exactly after all 3 of your picks. That's never going to make you look good. And imagine this franchise with Barzal, with Kyle Connor and Thomas Chabot, with Marchand, Pastrnak, Bergeron, McAvoy. Oof. What a Stanley Cup contender that would have been. That would have given the Bolts of the Colorado Avalanche a massive run for their money. So let's go ahead and talk about Cassidy's replacements, the unlikely replacements. And the source from this comes from The Athletic. It's Fluto again. He is saying, look, unlikely that it's going to be Sacco, Dean, or Kelly. They don't think they're going to go in-house. And the point to it is very simple, and I agree with Fluto on this one. They want a different vision. They want a different voice. So why would you fire Cassidy to bring in one of the assistants that are likely going to say the same, if not similar things than Cassidy? So there's 2 key areas that have been identified that Cam Neely and Don Sweeney want to go ahead and attack. It's player performance on the younger player side, and it's 5-on-5 offensive production. So Fluto goes ahead and gives us 5 coaches to talk about here. He says there's Jay Leach at 42. He was the Providence coach. He moved over to the Kraken as the assistant coach right now. They may want to bring him back because, again, they like internal area coaches. He has a capacity to develop younger players. This may be the leading candidate for the Bruins job. You also have David Quinn. He's 55 years old. We know he worked with the New York Rangers. He was replaced by Gallant. The Rangers flipped everybody at this point. I actually thought David Quinn was an excellent coach. I think Gallant is an amazing coach. I mean, I wouldn't have fired Quinn unless I knew I could get Gallant. So Gallant's an upgrade, but I think Quinn is actually very good at developing younger players. People point to Lafreniere and they'll point to Capo and the New York Rangers' inability to develop, but I think the Rangers were developing. They just panicked. They fired everybody. They traded a whole bunch of players and they went veteran. Worked for this year. Then you go ahead and you take a look at Ryan Mugenel. He's 46 years old. Again, he's a Providence guy. What do we hear about this guy? Positive and enthusiastic. All right, hugs around the world. It's going to save the world. All sarcasm aside, most coaches aren't as, high energy as Coach Ryan D is over here. Usually they're pretty monotone. They can be pretty flat. I think a positive and enthusiastic message goes a long way to players. You just got to make sure you're not crossing that line into best friend territory. You got Nate Lehman at 49 years old. He comes from Providence College. He has 11 years experience at Providence. These NCAA coaches coming in, they're just a totally different breed. The NCAA is all about recruiting. You get the best players through recruiting, you're going to win in the NCAA. Yes, there's a development piece, but recruitment is such an important part of NCAA hockey. And at the end of the day, Boston area colleges always are going to have an ability to attract elite players. So is he good or is he not? It's always hard to tell for me with these NCAA guys, but he is somebody that could be looked at, and he's in the Boston area. They're very familiar with him. And finally, you got Spencer Carberry. He's 40 years old. This is the young gun out of the group. He comes from the Leafs. And what do I like about this guy? He was a Providence assistant coach. Remember, we said Sweeney's going to look. I think he's looking in the Boston area. I don't think he's going to go into the coaching carousel. If that makes any of you guys feel any better, because some people don't like the incestuous repeat of all the same coaches. These are 5 new guys. Well, who is this guy? He's the Leafs power play guy. And the Leafs went from the worst power play in the NHL, especially for a team as good as they were, to the best, the #1 power play in the NHL this year. You want to generate offense, you bring in Carberry. So I think Leach, Carberry, Quinn, in that order is the top 3 I would be looking at. If you want to check out more, go to theathletic.com. Take a look at what Fluto is writing there. I think it's a great subscription. I am not sponsored by it. We are not sponsored by them. I just think it's a wonderful place to get news. Okay, let's talk about David Pastrnak. Pasta. #1, dislikes Sweeney. Maybe, maybe not. There's the rumor mill out there because his buddies Krejci and Krug were really just passed along by players, by Sweeney, not by players. So Sweeney ends up letting Krug just walk. And I understand why you let Krug walk. Why would you pay that kind of money? You can't have too many small defensemen. So you already had Grzelcyk and McAvoy in there. You can't keep Krug. That is 3 defensemen that are way too light. You can have a couple small guys and puck movers, but you cannot build an entire blue line on guys as small as those 3. So he ends up letting Krug walk. He ends up letting David Krejci walk. And the rumor mill had it that Boston had offered Krug a $45 million deal. And rumor had it that Boston offered Krug up to $40 million, but the Blues offered him a $45 million deal. So the Blues ended up winning on the free agency that was Torrey Krug. And we all know David Krejci went back to Europe to play. And there are rumors that Pastrnak is calling his buddy, or has been texting his buddy, or in communication with his buddy, to come back to the Bruins. That would be a massive uplift for Boston, because when it was Krejci and Bergeron at center, Coyle was a hell of a third option. And now you have Eric Holla. You got to love that if they would be able to reunite those two back in Boston. We also got to talk about the Pasta contract. Well, he's going to be 27 years old when this contract lines up. And right now he has 504 points in 510 games. This is one of the best wingers in the NHL. Great goal scorer. You could compare him to 4 players, in my opinion. There's Artemi Panarin. That's the gold standard contract. That's what the Pastrnak camp is going to go after. And why? Well, he had 320 points in 322 games. So that is similar production. He was offered an $81.5 million deal over 7 years, which annually is $11.64 million. That is a huge amount of cheddar for this guy, but Panarin and the Rangers are in the Stanley Cup Eastern Conference Final right now. The other players that are comparative, how about Mitch Marner at $10.5 million? How about Mikko Rantanen at $9.5 million? Or Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov at $9 million? There is an NHL agent out there who is saying he thinks Pastrnak is worth $68.5 over an 8-year deal. I think that's banana sandwich. Not going to happen. No way, Jose, is this guy going to take that kind of a hometown discount when you just see those 4 names out there getting paid like gangbusters. And remember, he's an unrestricted free agent. Sweeney will 100% trade this guy if there is no deal. He ain't going to let him walk for free. There's going to be no rental player for free. Head over to hockeydbhere.com and you can see how David Pastrnak is doing. Like we said, he's got 504 points. Well, we want to compare him to some of these players so you can see I'm not off my rocker. Mitch Marner, 427 games played, 455 points. Slightly more productive, and he's at $10.5 million. Artemi Panarin at this point in time has 508 games played and 569 points. So this is something that they could use at the point in time to say, well, he's outperformed his contract. So maybe not in the 10.5 or $11.67 million range. But here is 2 guys that I think are very realistic. One is Mikko Rantanen. Mikko right now is 408 for 408. You can see that here. This is a hyper productive player. He's right in line right now in terms of point production that David Pastrnak is in. Or we could jump over here to Kirill Kaprizov, who has 136 games played and 159 points. And we know he signed that $9 million deal, that monstrous deal. So this could be something that Boston ends up pointing to. Regardless, I think the deal is between $9 million and $11.67 million. I don't think it's going to go lower than that. And we already saw the cap hell that Boston is in. So now that we know the state of the Boston Bruins players, before we talk more about Sweeney, the future, and the trade bait pieces, we have to talk about where Boston is at with Bergeron or without Bergeron and on their opening day. So if I go ahead here and open up their opening day roster, you can see, and it is not pretty. Hall, Haula, and Pastrnak. Eric Haula, Pastrnak, and Hall is your first line with Debrusk, Coyle, and Craig Smith right now. This is as it stands with no moves made by Don Sweeney, but don't worry, we'll talk all about Sweeney's moves. Taking a look at the back end, it's going to be Carlo and Lindholm with Forbert and Clifton and Mike Riley. This is tough. You're going to have Ullmark, you're going to have Swayman, but this is not an all-star roster at this point in time. I'm not even sure this is a playoff roster at this point in time. It is going to take a while before Grzelcyk, McAvoy, and Marchand are able to return. That's 3 massive pieces, never mind the fact that they don't have Patrice Bergeron. Now, we've talked about this in our playoff previews, the requirements to become a Stanley Cup contender. And why do I talk about the requirements to be a cup contender? Because I believe for Bergeron to return to the Bruins, he has to believe the Bruins can win a Stanley Cup. And can the Bruins win a Stanley Cup? My answer is yes, but next year only. So is Bergeron willing to take a 1-year deal and get the band back together? Let's go ahead and bring up the Stanley Cup checklist. I've talked about this many times. The Athletic has talked about this many times. This is Don Luszczyszyn's model. He says you need an elite center, an elite winger, an elite defenseman, an elite goalie, and then you need top line centers, winger, defenseman. Then you need top 6 forwards, 2 of them, and you need 2 top pairing defensemen. So when we take a look at this year, Patrice Bergeron, if you get the gold check mark, that means you are above league requirement. A black check mark means you meet league requirement, and gray check mark means you're below. Red means you're trash. It is no good. So Bergeron, Marchand, and McAvoy check the box for center, winger, and defenseman. Swayman does not check it for elite goaltender this year or next year. When you take a look at this year, Eric Haula checks it this year. Great, just slightly. So you would have loved to have seen Krejci in this spot. Haula is definitely not up to par of some of the second line centers in the NHL, but what this gray check mark tells you is good enough. Then you take a look at Pastrnak and Hall. They both check the box this year, and they both check the box next year. When you take a look at Hampus Lindholm, is he a number 1 defenseman? He better be for $6.5 million. Well, according to advanced analytics, he is below the requirement for a number 1 defenseman. He didn't have the greatest year this year. He's projected out next year to not be that good. I actually think this is going to be a black or a gold check mark. Why do I think that? Because it always skews your advanced analytics when you're traded mid-season. Then you take a look, you got Craig Smith. He's considered good enough. Charlie Coyle is considered slightly below good enough. Matt Grzelcyk is considered a top pairing defenseman, so that's excellent. I think Grzelcyk, Lindholm, and McAvoy are all gold, but that's my opinion. Then when you take a look at Brandon Carlo, he is a light gray check. And at the end of the day, remember, these are data points based on advanced analytics. So as much as you just heard my opinion and you may have your own opinion, you can't argue with data. The data comes from the player's own input. But in short, that looks like a pretty good team. That looks like a team that can win a Stanley Cup. But you take Patrice Bergeron out of that mix and it falls off quickly. Why? Well, assume everybody comes back. Assume you don't find a different center. Erik Haula ends up being your number one center. And now you go from Jeremy Swayman being the only question mark to Charlie Coyle, Erik Haula, and your entire center position falling off the face of the earth. It's not as bad as some teams, but if you don't have Patrice Bergeron in there, you really don't have any depth at center. And there's other people you could go out and find there to help with your center depth, but I don't know. I mean, I really do think they need Bergie back, but with Bergie coming back, this team could absolutely be a cup contender, so Sweeney could likely convince him. If Bergeron does or doesn't come back, how is Don Sweeney been as a general manager? And frankly, if you ask me, you got to take a look at his trades and you got to take a look at his draft picks. Let's go take a look. Drafting is how you get players in the system. 2021, nobody's played in the NHL. 2020, nobody's played in the NHL. 2019, nobody's played in the NHL. 2018, nobody's played in the NHL. This is not normal. This is bad. When you take a look at other teams, go to quanthockey.com. You can take a look at all the NHL entry drafts for your favorite team for free. Quant Hockey is fantastic. It's one of my favorite places to use. Now, how can a player from 2018, all of your picks, not end up making the draft? It's because you don't have a first round pick. When we talk about this, first round picks have the best chance to play in the NHL. Second round picks got a 20 to 25% chance to play in the NHL. Third to seven round pick, they don't have anything more than a 15% chance or so chance to play in the NHL, and it can take anywhere from 4 to 5 years for pick 2 or a round 2 pick down to a round 7 pick to make the NHL. But still, this is a lot of players. This is 5, 10, 14, and then you take a look at 7, 21 players. Not a single one of these guys got a single game in the NHL. That's not ideal drafting, to be honest. I understand draft and develop, but this is draft and not play them. Then when you take a look at the 2017 draft, you can see, okay, how did they end up doing? Not that well. It's not great. Swayman's the only one in here that I'm looking at going, all right, there's something here. And then you move down to the 2016 NHL entry draft and you go, Charlie McAvoy, nailed that one. Really nice job. 100% nailed it. And then it's 2015, which is the infamous 3 picks of doom. Just totally missed. You got Carlo in there. You got Lazon in there. But I think the end of the day, Sweeney is a pretty horrible drafter. And is Sweeney a horrible drafter, or are the scouts just bad? Well, I don't think the scouts are actually that bad. In 2014, they found Pastrnak without Sweeney there. In 2013, they missed, but they didn't have a first round pick, so that can happen. When you move down to 2012, from 2012, you got Matt Grzelcyk in there in the 3rd round. That's absolutely nailing it. Nothing wrong with that. You got Matthew Benning. That's pretty good all the way down there in the 6th round. Then when you go to 2011, Dougie Hamilton was a fine first round pick, probably the best player they could have picked at that point in time. They ended up getting Tyler Sagan at number 2. They found Ryan Spooner here at one point. So there is a little bit of history here of the Boston Bruins hitting on the draft. Basically, though, since Don Sweeney's been there, I can't think of a single notable player this guy nailed who isn't named Charlie McAvoy. And he nailed that one. I mean, to get the number 2 overall defenseman at pick number 14, that's pretty darn good. But after that, all busts. Then we can walk over to CapFriendly.com and you can actually take a look at Don Sweeney's trade history. So as you walk through here, you can see, okay, there's nothing here that's standing out to me. Here's the Hampus Lindholm deal. So Lindholm coming over for a first, a second, and a couple players / prospects at this point in time. I thought this was a great deal for the Bruins, who were pushing all in for the cup. It worked out really well because they were able to sign him. Then as you keep looking down, I don't see anything here that's amazing. Okay, the Taylor Hall pick here is pretty good. I don't mind that one at all. Mike Riley was a pretty good acquisition at this point in time. The Nick Ritchie, Danton Heinen, I don't know. We'll see. I'm just going to hear and mumble about it. The Charlie Coyle acquisition here for Ryan Donato. As you kind of look down, I look at these and go, for a guy as active as he was, you nailed it on Lindholm. You nailed it on McAvoy, and it just seems to be a bunch of misses. So, conclusion, is Cassidy bad at developing, or is Sweeney and the scouts bad at drafting? Probably both. And I think Cassidy would have had better success had he had better players in the system, because Cassidy proved with his players in the AHL and Providence that he can develop NHL talent. So to have a whole bunch of swings and misses, that's tough. And then what ends up happening is the beat of the drum gets louder and louder because more players in the locker room keep saying, look, he's not helping any of us. We're all failing. Well, you're all bad. That's the way it goes. So where does that end up leaving us for trade bait? It leaves us with left-handed D-men. And I don't think you're going to be trading Lindholm, and I don't think you're going to be trading Grzelcyk. So that really comes down to Mike Riley and Derek Forbort. I think Forbort is the one you got to target to get out of there. It doesn't really matter what you get back. You're just trying to get the salary cap off the books. Ask the Coyotes. They'll take cap at any time. Maybe you want to get rid of Marcus Foligno. Marcus, that's the brother. Nick Foligno. Get rid of the older brother. Nick Foligno's got to get out of there with $3.8 million. Again, I don't know who's going to take him, so I always go back to the Yotes, because it's the Yotes. I mean, they took Andrew Ladd, for pity's sake. So maybe they would end up taking Foligno and give you a handout back for him. Craig Smith is somebody you could move out. Jake Debrusk, it has been well documented he wants out. He's $4 million over the next 2 years. Moving him out would definitely help you re-sign Bergeron. I don't know where Debrusk and the Bruins have landed at this point in time. I know they want to keep him, but he's definitely something you could look to move out. Pastrnak is a guy you could look to move out. Why do I say that? Well, if he doesn't like Sweeney and there really is a rift between Pastrnak and Sweeney, it is going to be Pastrnak that loses that one. Sweeney's in charge. So even though Sweeney may end up getting fired after this year or whatever it ends up being, he is not going to fall on the sword for a player and go, you're right. If I don't quit right now, you're not going to re-sign and I'm going to do what's best for the team. No, he's going to do what's best for Don Sweeney. So he's going to move Pastrnak out of there if he doesn't think he can get a deal done. And Linus Ullmark is another guy I think you could look at getting out of there because it's $5 million. I don't care how well he played down the stretch. He blew it in the playoffs. There are teams that are just starved for a goalie all over the league, and I think Swayman is good enough to run with. All right, so that leaves us with the future. What is it going to be? Well, first off, they need Bergeron back. There's no question. You want to win a cup. You want one more hurrah. You need Patrice Bergeron back. He's going to take time after this elbow surgery with his family to contemplate his future. What happens beyond the year 2023? Well, it's a mess. That's what I see. It's an absolute mess. I think this team will need a full tear down and rebuild outside of McAvoy and Lindholm. These guys are both young enough that you could roll with both of them. Same with Swayman. So Swayman, Lindholm, McAvoy is probably your core at this point in time. Marchand is going to stay there, but I mean, you need picks, you need pieces back. This team's going to be in cap hell beyond 2023. It's a mess. So you get Bergeron back for 1 year. You got one more hurrah at it. Your core, we just talked about it. Your possible core could be Pastrnak, Marchand, and Grzelcyk joining the core. So you could have a core of 6 and build around that. Depends if you can get that deal done for Pastrnak and if Marchand wants to end up staying. I mean, I think he will, but he's got term left, so he can't dictate leaving. He's on a great deal as well, too. But there's no point in keeping a guy like Marchand if you're not going to win in the next 3 or 4 years. And Grzelcyk is another guy. He's got 2 years left on his deal. But once again, what are you going to do with him? And then draft picks, are there any there? I mean, they don't have too many draft picks right now. So at this point in time, they've had a 12-year window. They've shot their shot. They have done excellent things. But I think the sun is quickly setting on the Boston Bruins. But if they want one last go, they are going to need their captain and their fearless leader, Bergeron, to return. Snack, this one's for you. Thanks for being here with us, boys, girls, hot garbage sports fans. Remember to subscribe and comment down below.